Hello, and welcome to the Path of Most Persistence. This is a place where we hear and share tenacious stories of overcoming obstacles with our partners who dare to share a bit of their own personal paths. The City of Brownsville City Commission voted to appoint Mrs. Helen Ramirez as a city manager beginning in January 9th of this year. Prior to her current role, she served as interim and as deputy city manager for the City of Brownsville, in addition to serving as the executive director and CEO of the Greater Brownsville Incentive Corporation. Ramirez has been instrumental in accelerating growth and redevelopment in Brownsville, overhauling the development codes and spearheading organizational culture. She has served communities in Central Texas and Southern California throughout her 10-year professional career in public service, including serving in high-growth markets as Assistant City Manager for the City of Hutto. Ramirez participates in the Texas City Managers Association. She's a member of the International City County Management Association and American Institute of Certified Planners. She formerly served on the Technical Advisory Committee of the Rio Grande Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization. Helen, thank you so much for being with me today. I know your schedule is so very busy.
No, thank you for having me. I'm very excited. I remember we served on a panel on Inquieta and on women's empowerment. So thank you for the invitation and thank you for having me.
It's so good. And I'll tell you, when we first met there, I knew at that moment, not just because of your title, but you were a woman that I wanted to have an extended conversation with. And you can tell that as you speak, as you present, as you engage audiences, you have a true passion for not only what you do in your day job, but it seems as though in every area of your life, and especially working with women. So again, I'm a fan of yours, and I just want to hear all the things that you have to say today.
Well, it's been a journey. I historically I've worked for a very male-dominated profession, whether it's urban planning or engineering profession. But I've counted on a lot of support, not only from a network of women, but of men too. My mentor was actually a certified building official, Henry Taylor. He passed during COVID, but he was my mentor for about 20 years. And I think what women need to really think about is their confidence. We have to be twice as much prepared when you are in a meeting or you lean into the table. And there's a very high standard. And sometimes there's certain stereotypes, whether you're a Latino woman or a woman in general. So for me, it's been a wonderful journey. My husband, Juan, is very supportive. Actually, he works from home. I have 3 kids, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 13-year-old, girl, boy. And he handles a lot of the day-to-day activities of the kids so that I can be a city manager. And, there's only about 14% of women city managers in the nation. And I am the only female city manager in the top 18 most populous cities in the state of Texas.
Okay, so you said amazing things already. So let's start there. What is that like? How does that feel? Because surely you just gave that percentage, you spoke to it, so there must be a certain weight that comes along with that honor, that recognition. What does that weight feel like for you, or do you even feel it?
I'm a person that, because I love government and I love community, there may be at times where you feel that way, but I have a great support system in my executive team in Brownsville. So the important is you can feel the weight, but don't let the weight consume you, because many times that's fear, right? We want a fear of the fear of failure. And so that can be paralyzing for women, or it can be a strength. So for me, I really don't think of that fear of the weight. You do, we're human, but the important thing is to not let it take over, paralyze you to the point of you have a fear of making decisions. We make decisions every single day, very important decisions, from a fire in a landfill, that I had to deal with this weekend, to the largest economic development in the history of Brownsville was just announced this week, $116 million expansion of a food manufacturing plant. To yesterday, I was at the Capitol and there was a bill on aerospace, and I gave testimony in favor of the bill. So those are the types of things that I think about. I mostly think about accelerating the community and really really working to make it better. And I think of my children and that they live in that community, and I want them to be proud of who their mom is and what she does every day. I will also say they're my biggest critics.
Yes.
So when there's a certain restaurant that they want in town, they'll make it known to me. I had someone, I was on a international women's panel in Spanish a couple of weeks ago. And I remember the executive director of our housing authority, Carla Mancha, she remembered my speech from Inquieta, women's conference last summer, and she said, "There's something that you said that I remember, and has stayed with me. You talked about when your daughter Vega, she was 4 at the time when I became deputy city manager in 2019 in Brownsville. She said, 'Mom, what is your position right now?' I said, 'Deputy city manager.' And who's above your position? What position is that?" I said, "City manager." And she said, "Okay, well, when are you going to become city manager?" It stays with me. I'm like, "Baby, I just started as deputy." Then that time will come, and to know that time is now. And she's 8 years old, and she's kind of been with me through that journey. It's just very special.
That is very special, and how important it is, and how really blessed or fortunate she is that she's able to witness that and also walk along that path with you, parallel to what you're doing. But when I first asked that question about the weight, what does that weight feel, or do you feel the weight that you carry? I love how you frame that, because we can choose to see that weight as a burden, but it sounds as though you also use it as a motivator. It's something, and that's a choice we make, right? We can choose to see it or feel it as a burden, or to motivate you to push beyond what's expected, or perhaps maybe what you even thought of yourself.
It's absolutely a challenge. And I thrive in innovation, in a different way of thinking and of seeing things. I was blessed early in the career when I was the senior planner of the city of Hawthorne, California, because I grew up in Southern California in Alhambra, and I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, studied architecture and then urban planning. I remember that one of my first planning jobs, the director, Mike Goodson, he would challenge me to look at 2 sides of that question. So there would be a development question. We had the ordinance, and he would say, "Okay, Helen, argue a point." And then he'd say, "Okay, flip it, argue the other point." That has really helped me to understand and to listen to different vantage points and really be less subjective, right? Really kind of understand where people are coming from, and very relatable. I think that's one of my strengths. And, I truly believe that as a society, Brownsville or any area, whether you have a very high socioeconomic or low socioeconomic, we all deserve a better community. We all do. True. But one of my mottos right now is one city. And it really speaks to, it's not about government handling all our problems. It's really a collaboration between community, government, private sector, education. It's all that. We all have to be ambassadors of our city. And that's how we're going to accelerate our quality of life, our economic development, and become a better city. The burden is not on just one sector. If we come together, then we are going to accelerate and be successful quicker, faster. You know what? We're going to have better relationships and trust. And so what I see that I always talk to my employees of which I have over 1,200 employees.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's the weight of the employees, right?
Yes.
You want to make sure that we create a culture where they feel empowered. We talk about 4 values: innovation, participation, communication, and trust.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't feel safe, how do you innovate?
That's
And
right.
if we're trying to innovate, then we need to create an environment where they can all feel safe, and they can also feel okay to pilot something, fail, get up and try again.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful environment of inclusion, everyone feeling involved, and not only within your organization, as you said, but throughout the community. And in your role, how do you model that? I know you're intentional about it, but what are some of those daily notions that you put perhaps in your head or at the forefront of your thinking in the way you respond to individuals or the way you go about initiating a conversation to intend to make people feel included? What do you do intentionally to get that done?
Wow, that's an excellent question. We integrate many leadership programs. Our frontline employees, we even created a leadership program for them. Some of them had never even been to a course on emotional intelligence, on customer service.
Mm-hmm.
And so placing some of that budget towards those types of courses, right? We have a specific course with Leading with Purpose for our police officers. And it is a leadership policeman who leads that. And so it's not just about checking a box. What is the content of what they're learning? Do I also, I practice a lot of emotional intelligence. People can be very passionate about a project, about a situation. And so many times, I really think before I speak because I want them to make sure that they feel, and sometimes I say, this is a leadership conversation.
Yes.
You're not in trouble. Things didn't go the way we thought, but let's reflect, take the time and reflect upon the situation and then come back and let's discuss it. I think it's the approach. And also whether you're a city manager, an executive director, CEO, all eyes are on you. Mm-hmm. You reflect the culture. And so I just had this great town hall. Every 3 months, we have a town hall with all our employees. Mm-hmm. One of the main things, it's not about me. It's really about them. And so we showcased our incredible police officers saved 2 individuals from a fire. Mm. And they were featured, and they just talked about, they didn't even, they were quick to react, and we want to recognize that. Yes. We want to recognize our dedicated employees. It's hard being a public servant nowadays, and particularly in a border economy. Yes. We're dealing with immigration influx. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with also a change in our economy with SpaceX. South Launch Site is there. Yes. We also have a new airport, a new airline we're onboarding. So I always tell them that we're fixing the foundation, but we're also accelerating innovation. So it's very excited. I just read off all the wonderful restaurants that we're getting. Before, they had to be tried in another city, in McAllen, and then they would come to the Valley or Brownsville. Mm-hmm. But to see that we're attracting businesses and companies from California, from Houston, and they're coming directly from Brownsville. So people are taking note. And actually, people who left Brownsville and said, maybe I'll never come back or I'll only come back when I retire, are coming back sooner. Mm. And so we had a business owner text me yesterday. His cocktail bar is James Beard's semifinalist. Goodness. And there's only 2 in Texas and I think 20 in the United States. He just texted me, he's like, Helen, we became the finalists now. So we're there with the top, industry in the nation, and that's Brownsville. And that's a lot of communication. There's a lot of communication and marketing that we transparency, and we talk a lot about where we are, proud of our culture, but also where we're going in terms of growing the economy.
That's beautiful and so well said. And what I'm also hearing you say, especially having those conversations as a city leader, is that although situations can be emotional, but there's a separation between dealing with an emotional situation with emotion because you want to celebrate or you want to recognize pain or frustration. But as a leader, you have to separate that out. And that is a talent that not everyone possesses, but clearly you do. And to me, that's so commendable and evident in all that you do. So,
Valerie and I always talk about with my directors. I have about over 20 directors, and we talk about leadership work is everyday work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something where I go to a retreat or go to a class and I take the class and now I'm a leader. Yeah. It is very intentional. We read a lot of Harvard Business Review. Mm-hmm. We actually have a book study coming up with our directors and assistant directors because we were thinking of succession planning. Who are our next leaders? Right. And, where are they? Where is everyone in the organization? Where would they like to be? If they're happy where they are, perfect. Do they want to try something new? I would rather have them stay in the organization than move on to another organization. But we definitely want to inspire them, and they want them to feel proud. We have many employees that have been there 10, 15, 20 years. Yes. And so we want to make sure they know that we care about them and we want what's best for them and the community that we serve.
And providing that encouragement that if they want to grow, that you not only are encouraging that, but you believe in them. And that's a wonderful aspect to have as an employee, that your boss or your leadership recognize your talent, they appreciate it, but they also see something more in you that perhaps maybe you never even considered about yourself. So that in itself develops as a type of culture that is, again, inclusive, it's inspirational, and it lends itself to a level of teamwork that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise just because of that belief in each other.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to give you an example. Our CFO shared with us that one of their employees that handles invoices was very quick with a project that we had to get done quickly. And they were very responsive. And so he forwarded to me just for awareness. And I responded to everybody, the whole group and the employee. And I said, thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this for our community and really taking the time to follow through and understanding that we needed this done quickly. She then came back to her director, CFO, and said, I have never been thanked from the city manager's office. This is to me the first time. So it's not always about, of course, compensation or other programs are very important, but sometimes it's just about saying thank you. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for your dedication. Right. Thank you for understanding and going out of your way for this one project that means so much to our community. You don't have to do it, but you're absolutely a team player in this. And so, for that, for me, it's very easy to do that. And I understand that it really means a lot to our employees and it really means a lot to me. I want them to know that I'm listening, I'm hearing, and I'm very grateful for them and their work.
You say it's easy to do. It is easy to do, but it's easy to not do because of all the demands. So again, I commend you for taking that time to do what some people may see as a small act, but as you said, with that employee, it means everything. Everyone wants to be seen and heard. So what a wonderful example of servant leadership that you provide, it sounds, to all those that you work with. Wonderful. So before we go into all the amazing projects that Brownsville has going on, all the different companies that are coming into and all the great growth that has happened, I want to spend a little bit of time on you. Why public service? Why, community planning? What was it that drew you to that whole field from the very beginning?
That's a great question. I've been reflecting upon it. Part of the actually interview process for city management was really explaining my why. And my why started with, my mother. While I lost my mother when I was young, I was 8. I have 2 sisters, 3 girls. And my father raised me with my grandmother, Celia, after she had raised 7 kids. But she... my mother, I remember coming back from church with our Sunday best, and she saw a homeless person beat up very badly, bleeding on the side of a fire station. And I remember her stopping the car and saying, "We really need to help this individual." And, in her broken English, we were all out of the car, and she went to talk to the fireman it was in the alleyway, so they hadn't seen him, and really got him, made sure we were there, and he got the care that he deserved. And it's engraved in my mind, that moment. And that's when I realized my mom, it wasn't about, going to a restaurant after church and your Sunday best. It was really seeing someone that had been hurt and abandoned and helping them. And from there, much of the schools that I went to included community service, whether it was the times of AIDS and the AIDS walkathons and supporting that horrible disease, to, just really to when I was in college, I did an internship at the county of San Luis Obispo. I was the only Spanish speaker in that department. And I remember they thought that workforce migrant housing was very important. It was a time of Cesar Chavez. It was a time of Dolores Huerta. In fact, tomorrow we're celebrating Cesar Chavez as a holiday for the city of Brownsville. And I remember to them, it's like, "Helen, we can't communicate because we don't speak Spanish, but we also want someone that they can feel comfortable." So I remember being out there and really talking to them. What do you need? If we were to build migrant housing, what would you want? What would you want for your kids? What do you need to feel that the community or the county really appreciates you and wants a basic quality of life for you? So it's those types of things. I remember just being kind of thrown into those positions, and rather than being scared, really seeing, what can I do? I never really thought about being a city manager, really. There's people that, think of their career, their career in public administration. But for me, I think it's very good to have planners as city managers or deputy city managers or assistants, because we really think of globally. We think of the whole ecosystem, whether it's transportation, land use, economic development, parks, community. This is Texas A&M has a wonderful urban planning. I've hired employees from this field here, and really being able to see that global. We always, sometimes cities and city administration, they always think about that same street to redevelop, that main street, that main boulevard. But what about the rest? If I give resources to an area that has a gap in parks or a gap in restaurants or a gap in, wouldn't that be better? Wouldn't there be more equity and diversity in my community? So those are the things that what I'm thinking as city manager, I introduced the 15-minute city, the city where I can take my child to school in 10 minutes, but then I can drive to work in 15.
That in itself. Please tell me more about that, because that in itself is, to any parent, has to be a blessing, has to be such a positive aspect.
Absolutely. So, and you'll hear the 15-minute city, but in Brownsville, we're divided into 4 districts, and each district has kind of its theme. For example, we have our downtown, historic downtown. It's one of the most historic cities downtown in the state of Texas. So that's going through a renaissance and redevelopment of new restaurants, of all types, new breweries, just new events. Then you have Southmost. Southmost has a lower economic threshold. However, the investment I just talked about the rich products, which is CPAC, food processing manufacturer, they actually, the largest, most important investment is in that district. So those are providing 50 to 100 more jobs in that district. To our airport, SpaceX is at the SpaceX launch site, but they also occupy about 100,000 square feet at our airport. Our northern part of Brownsville is really seeing a lot of redevelopment in that area, but new development, new master plan communities. And so, we need to ensure that when we look at our mobility or transportation plan, it's not just about vehicles, it's about trails. So with that trail connectivity, as well as bus, we're the largest bus provider with 1 million riders in all of the Rio Grande Valley. And so what are those connections that we have that we need, and what are we missing in every district. So we're studying that, and we're also allocating resources towards those needs.
Mm-hmm. So just as a refresher, how long have you been involved with the city of Brownsville in any capacity, in any position? How long has that been?
It's been since March of 2019.
Okay, so March of 2019. So that has been what? That is now 4 years?
Yes.
Okay, so in those 4 years, what have been some of the most profoundly culture-changing programs that have taken place or have been initiated during those 4 years?
So culture, do you mean like through the city, through development, or culture? Are you talking about culture like organizational culture or
I think see, you're so good. I left it vague just to see which way you'd go. So because I wanted it vague, you go in any direction you'd like.
I always say if I could change anything, I would change mindsets. The mindset. We're very much stereotyped. When I first was there, I remember talking to a lot of people and saying, we're going to do great things. And they were kind of reticent. They didn't really believe me. A year, 2 years, 3, I had people that said, I'm not going to move back for another 5 years. And then they moved a year and a half later back. And so I always talk about the new border economy, the new border economy being besides the immigration, and that's what you see a lot of the headlines is, we have an economy that a great relationship with the city of Matamoros, Mexico. And so there's a lot of commerce that goes back and forth between Matamoros. Even though we're a population of about 200,000, if you really look at the capture area of Cameron County and Matamoros, we're 1.2 million people.
That's substantial. Goodness.
Exactly. So it's telling our story a different way. The fact that SpaceX, we built a new airport in January of 2021, beautiful. It's just the right size. Regional airports are economic generators. And the fact that SpaceX decided, I'm not only going to be at Boca Chica launch site in Cameron County, but I'm gonna have avionics at the city of Brownsville Airport. In fact, I'm gonna lease a 45,000 square foot building from the city, and I'm going to improve it. It's those types of projects. Our Sunrise Mall. Malls are dying throughout the United States. Too much parking. And, I always tell people, and I would tell my employees, is we built one of the most successful main event, which is a family entertainment center in the nation. It is the highest grossing main event in the nation. Although Austin's is bigger by square feet, ours is the highest grossing. It's those types of real data points that we need to share so that people understand the change is real. I always say that you're there. Your success is when you start getting calls on complaints on construction. Because lots of times we see things, we know things, we negotiate contracts. Avelo Airlines, we just announced direct flights to Burbank, Hollywood, Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
And Orlando, direct from Brownsville Airport with Avelo Airlines, which is convenient, reliable, and still very affordable for our families. They'll be taking their first, whether it's job or vacation, directly from Brownsville, from their airport to these important states.
And not only them going there, but those that want to come to you.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
SpaceX's headquarters is in Hawthorne, California. So rather than taking the congested LAX, they could actually drive down to Burbank and really just take a direct flight. So here we are providing families, or the ability of families and friends to be able to travel to Brownsville at a low cost. We have beautiful beaches with Potter Island. We're really a wonderful zoo founded in 1971 on the Endangered Species Act. Now it's going through an expansion. So we have a wonderful cultural area. I remember we just leased out a building to local artists. So now we're doing local artists are really getting involved or through new mural programs or just through openings of art galleries. So we're really excited to see the culture, the art, the culinary, and also the business aspect.
I love this. So when I asked that question about the culture, it sounds as though a lot of the culture changes based on not only what's actually happening, but what it takes to make things happen. And it sounds as though that you're very much in control of telling your own story. Brownsville is telling their own story, not people telling Brownsville's story for themselves. That to me is extremely important, and that will make the difference in who is telling your story.
It's very powerful, I think, what you've just said. We've engaged a lot in communications and marketing since 2019. Mm-hmm. We need to tell our own story. It's a very authentic city. I have lived in different cities and worked for different cities in Southern California. Mm-hmm. Also worked in Central Coast of California. I lived in Austin and I lived in Madrid, Spain. Mm-hmm. My husband's Spanish, and I lived there for 10 years. I was recruited by the former city manager, Noel Bernard, who said, I really need someone that can take us to a different level with economic development and urban planning. We had 30-year-old codes, development codes that are 30. I always say it's like an onion. You were trying to peel things off to find the answer, right? Yes. And it doesn't have to be that hard, but it's very complex to change. And so we're one of the few cities in the United States for our size. We're about 186,000 population. So we're not a small city. Mm-hmm. That in a year and a half was able to overhaul their planning and all their building trade codes, and now invested $1 million. And this month, we're spearheading the SELA permitting process. So now we have this robust process where you're going to be able to see with your permit where you are in the development. Are you with fire? Are you with, getting your, XYZ permit? Are you in engineering? Are you with PUB waiting for your meter? So it's this type of really, I always say we're fixing our foundation because we did have a lot of deferred maintenance with roads, but we're also accelerating in our technology and our economy. Mm-hmm. And one of the most exciting projects is VTX fiber. Mm-hmm. What the city recognized, we're one of the least connected cities in the United States, along with the city of FAR and other cities. There's about, in the top 5 least connected, 3 are from the Rio Grande Valley. Mm. And that is unfortunate. There has been an unmet need. Right. And that's why our kids, I'll tell a story of a valedictorian in one of our Brownsville ISD. The professor was asking for her speech, and, it was getting late the night before. She had to knock on various doors of her neighbors to be able to get internet connectivity so she could write her paper. Goodness. And that's the reality of what occurred a couple of years ago. And so what we did is, prior to COVID, we formed with the Dallas Federal Reserve, gave some pro bono work, and worked with our city. And it wasn't just about the city. We brought in the Brownsville ISD, UTRGV. We brought in the Texas Southmost College, the community college, the 2 economic development corporations with the Greater Brownsville Centers Corporation, the Brownsville Community Improvement Corporation. We bought the Port of Brownsville. We brought everybody together and said, we all need to sign on this survey, to survey our community and our businesses to see where are the gaps in fiber connectivity and service, right? And our download and our upload. So we did take speed tests and all that. And then from there, COVID hit, the pandemic. And, we were awarded millions of dollars of American Rescue Plan money. The mayor and the city commission took $19.5 million, almost $20 million, and said, we're going to leverage a public-private partnership. And I think as cities evolve, they really need to look at that, because you leverage public dollars and with private investment. And so we launched an RFP, and Lit Communities came and competed for that. Now they're leveraging $70 million to our 19.5. And guess what, Valerie? We just started construction last Monday. So this is real. This is the here and now.
And thank you for giving that example, because that's one of those situations or circumstances where maybe communities that have not had the resources previously have really made it difficult for those within that community to compete. If you don't have basic technology basic communications, then everyone within that community is starting at a disadvantage. And speaking of a student that has so much talent and ability, that's a wonderful, although painful, example to realize that this is where things that so many of us take for granted, basic connectivity, that if those services are not provided, then the whole community is at a disadvantage. So that's a wonderful way of identifying a need that was readily fixed through these kinds of partnerships.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even the federal government after COVID,
Yes.
Remember, we started before COVID.
Yes.
I remember like Thanksgiving of probably 2019
Yes.
starting. It was Mayor Mendez really led the charge. The city commission created a strategic visioning plan, and that was very high on its plan.
Mm.
And then from there, being able to execute, right?
Yeah.
Execution. I mean, I could dream up a lot of dreams, but
It all comes down to
execution.
Yes.
If there is no critical path, you won't get there. You'll
That's
dream
right.
a lot, but
Right.
you won't get there. And so to me, it's game changing, right? I mean, everyone's talking about it being a critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's going to be buried, it's going to be very sustainable. We're looking at 48 inches below grade, which means that if we do have certain weather conditions,
Yes.
windstorm requirements, that we will have very robust and the best connectivity. If you cannot afford, and it's going to be affordable because the fact that we're building out 100 miles of the middle mile, think of like we're building out the main highway, and they're going to build fiber to the home and to the business, the small streets, right? And so that's going to give us the ability to be more affordable. And those that really can't even afford that, there are programs, federal programs, where they can actually get it for free. So we are looking, those packages that we have, it's also awareness. And then after the building out, which is an 18 to 24 month process, then there's going to be a lot of education. How does grandma get on the iPad?
Yes.
Or, it's a lot of or is there a Spanish, English kind of disconnect?
Right.
All our call services are bilingual. I mean, we're really making it, we'll probably even knock on doors, or we created the little door hanger in English and Spanish. This is what's coming in your neighborhood. It's just giving them options. If they want to stay with Spectrum or whoever they have, they can absolutely do that. But I think our communities need to have options.
Options are always good.
Mm-hmm.
So before I pivot onto current projects, things that are going on in Brownsville that I really want you to share, I want to go back to a comment that you made early on in this portion of our conversation. You said that when you started 4 years ago, when I asked you about that 4-year time frame, you said that when you started making the comment that we're going to be great, we're going to do great things, and people said, great, kind of questioning, what was that about? What is that made them question it, and why would they question?
And I've reflected a lot because I was thinking in a way, why don't they believe me? So I was making it about me, which is leadership is not about you. Don't make it about, and I always tell my daughters, it's not about you. Is it about you or is it about the community? And that is a reflection. And so I thought, I'm missing something here. What I was missing was there's a whole history before me. And the history before me is that there was wonderful concepts, but the city, and this happens all over, this is not anything unique to Brownsville, is that there has to be execution, and with execution comes leadership. And so maybe there was a lot of complacency, or things let just things evolve naturally. But are we going to try to accelerate? Because it's hard. Yes. This is a lot of hard work. This is a lot of persistency, and it's a lot of hours, and it's a lot of belief, and it's hiring the right people that really row in the same direction, right? And it's, great projects are complex and they're multidisciplinary. The answers that you find are not always with the department you think. Creativity may come from a whole different way, and it'll make your project better. And so that's one of my strengths, project management. We got the organization kind of rowing. Like for the first time, they had work plans, individual work plans that they came up with. But, even learning what's a SMART goal.
Yes.
A measurable goal with a specific time frame. Introducing those concepts really have gotten us to where we are. And also with the right culture.
Yes.
It's okay to pilot something. That's one of my favorite words.
Yes.
Pilot it. And, we're still right now piloting the right hours of our animal shelter.
Yes.
Pilot it. And we will adjust. Pilot Sunday service, bus service. So, I remember the story when we announced Main Event, right? That this new, you churning a Sears box, which is the most boring. That's where I went with my father to buy appliances. It wasn't the most fun place on earth. And to go from that to like cool video game and laser tag and pizza and all this fun stuff, bowling. I mean, it's amazing, right? I remember that someone told me a story about a resident calling the corporate office, seeing to see if it was true or that if we were lying. And it's almost like, do I deserve this? Is this real? Or is it like the past? I'm being told this story that never comes to fruition. And so that's what the community had been accustomed to. So to this day, now it's here, it's real, and it's being built. And so now they're not questioning as much because they see it before their own eyes.
So everything you're saying, it seems as though that it goes back to credibility, and that is very intentional. You and the rest of the leadership has built that layer of credibility throughout the community, but that seems to have come through the intentionality of everything that you all are doing. It's very methodic. You're doing things for a reason. You're checking for partnerships and, like you said, piloting, making sure this is something the direction you really want to go. So the credibility is high. People believe, and that changes culture.
That's absolutely right. I spoke recently at the Board of Realtors for Brownsville, South Padre Island, and I remember data speaks for itself. Yes. And there's a slide that I show even during COVID, our hotel occupancy was high. It was still at 65%. If you went to Dallas, it was at 40%. I remember talking to Marriott hotel owners that I know, and I said, how the heck, what is Brownsville doing? And I always invite them to come because we hosted White Texas, which is a summit bringing private investors to invest in the state of Texas. They were so impressed with our story that they actually did a spinoff last month, and 70 to 80 investors or companies came to Brownsville, saw our downtown. We had a panel from the Port of Brownsville, which is the largest publicly owned port in the nation, and really saw what we're doing. It's this awareness. And so what I would say is that, the data that they saw was in a 1 year, we probably issued about 1,400 residential permits. We're double that to almost like 2,400 something. Even our commercial permits, they were like 5, and then in 2021, and now they're 100. So it's those types of things. The private investment has doubled from 200 million to 400 million, and we actually are building out our new Medada master plan community. That's 1,300 acres, 3,000 homes, but with commercial. So it's not just residential; it's also a mix of commercial and educational, institutional uses. So we're really the numbers are speaking for themselves. And so we're really excited with the data that we're showing. And then when I talked about permit software system, they clapped. They were very ecstatic because, that's also credibility and transparency.
Yes. So all the things that are going on in Brownsville, what are some of the projects, some of the initiatives that for those of our listeners that don't know, they need to know, or some you just want to really focus on for this conversation?
Right, absolutely. I think BTX Fiber, I would ask everybody to kind of follow that project. We're becoming a different model for broadband connectivity in the nation. Sometimes you hear about municipally owned broadband. Yes. That can be 100% or that can be whatever. What we're saying is, and we were testified in the state legislature, is public-private partnerships can work, and BTX Fiber is an example of that. So really seeing that project and how game-changing it will be for our community is very exciting. I also see SpaceX is close to launch. They actually tested 31 of 33 Raptor engines. I'm going to give you a data point that I think is so important. Starship itself, it's the tallest and most powerful rocket known to mankind. 98% of that vehicle launch, Starship, is produced and manufactured in Brownsville, Cameron County. Now, that's our workforce. I always talk about our intergenerational workforce, which one is very talented, and two, they have a lot of credibility and persistence. And so they have over 1,700 employees, of which 71% are local employees. The Raptor engine is built in Hawthorne, California, shipped to McGregor, tested there, and then shipped to Brownsville, so Cameron County. So this is a very exciting time in history. I remember our community when the Cowboys win, there's this thing called pitada. Everyone goes on the street and honks their horn. It's like this big party. Well, actually, with SN-15, one of the first rockets launched and came back. I remember people were out in the street. You could see it from downtown Brownsville. It was a clear day. So people are watching and people are very excited about what's happening. And, the fact that they're hiring interns from UT Austin, UTRGV, Texas A&M, I mean, they're hiring local, and I'm very excited about. And then a third thing I'm excited about is we announced a new hospital, GHR. So it's our third hospital, and which is good for diversity, right? Yes. Diversity in health. We do have high diabetes rates, but the fact that we have UTRGV, the School of Public Health, which is Houston, they've been very innovative. We're very fortunate to have a Department of Health and Wellness, believe it or not, which really spearheaded COVID. They really led the charge with getting our most vulnerable population tested for free and also vaccinated for free as well. And then also the beautiful trail system that we have. We just inaugurated our West Rail Trail. It was an old rail, UPRR rail, that has been transformed into trail.
So this is a hiking trail?
Biking and walking and running trail. And it's wide and it's beautiful and it's, it connects schools with neighborhoods. It's safe. It even has lighting. We're looking at the amenities that we want. Like, we're asking the community, what kind of amenities do you want along the trail? And so we have wonderful relationship with the RGV MPO and are always competing for that federal and local funding. So excited about that.
So as we begin to come to a close in our conversation, I want to know what's next. Helen, what's next, not only for the city of Brownsville, but what's next for you?
For me and for the city, I was interim city manager for 6 months, and, we kept going. I mean, we approved a collective bargaining agreement with police and fire during that time. We went through a redistricting. I mean, I think it's for us is, I always go back to creating that 15-minute city, right? Yes. But really, what are the tools that we need? What are the gaps that we have in our city? And to create that, also engaging our community, have them be the ambassadors of our stories, right? Accelerating our economy, our revenue. Yeah. We have always, my husband tells me, my husband Juan, he says, Helen, it's not just about one city that you run there's about 20 different types of businesses that you run here. Our landfill is a $14 million revenue generator. Our broadband is going to be another maybe $5 million revenue generator. So I want to see government is evolving and we're evolving with it. So I'm very excited on how we continue to fix our potholes, fix our most basic things, accelerate through fiber connectivity, but also see one of the most innovative companies in our history evolve in Brownsville, and also how economic development will really shift the way we're seen. It's already shifting. why would anybody want to have a spinoff in White Texas did if something wasn't going on? So really people are taking note and our community's taking note. So I'm very excited about my future, about our future, about our employees and our kids. Kids are so smart. I think sometimes they're not, they're undervalued. I always think like I said, my kids, they are my biggest advocates and my biggest critics. So really listening. And then what are we going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do about it? So as we close, I just want to ask you, is there anything that we haven't talked about that's been left unsaid that needs to be said?
I think what needs to be said is that, women in general, professional women, whatever you do, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're professional, we do have to work twice as hard and be twice as prepared. It's not good or bad. It's just the way it is. And so we can either accept it and accelerate and support one another, or we can say it's just too hard and I'm going to give up. We need more women leaders. We need more women city managers. Whether you're a city manager or deputy, what have you, it's important for you to be there. Lots of times opportunities are missed because we're scared. It's okay to be scared, but get over it. Let yourself be scared for 15 minutes, 24 hours, but move it. Get over it. Do it. You can do it. And yes, it's okay for you to be scared.
Right.
But if you don't try, how are you going to know?
That's
How
right.
is anybody? And we need to be seen.
That's
And
right.
so I would say, when we talk about leaning in to a conversation, lean in. Ask questions. There are many times I worked in a company where, sometimes because we were junior, didn't have the experience or women, we weren't allowed to ask questions. And I think it's very important, to ask, to be at the table, to be brave and to just lean in and participate and communicate and also innovate.
Well said. Perfectly said. Nothing else I can add to that. It's all about having the courage, doing things despite your fear, just moving forward.
Absolutely.
So, Helen, thank you so much for sitting with me today. As always, it's very inspirational, but such an honor. And thank you for all your public service. It's obviously affects and making improvement throughout the city of Brownsville, but it has that wave effect. So here we are in College Station, and you're making and having an influence on us today, and I know to all of our viewers.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege to be here. It's an honor for me. You doing this podcast and continuing to do that and telling our story is so important. And we need to celebrate our success and celebrate your failure too. Nobody, if you fail for one thing, you have your whole career behind you.
That's right.
Sometimes we want this perfection, and we really need to get over that perfection. When we're told very young, do this, do that, do this, do that, be here, be that. No, be yourself.
That's right.
And celebrate yourself.
That failure is not who we are. It's just a moment in time. Get back up. And to our audience, thank you so much for listening to this conversation. I hope you've had the opportunity to listen to the entire conversation and all of our other conversations on all of our platforms. And for me, and I hope for you, like Helen, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Thank you, and have a